I don't feel like March snow counts. Something happens with me when the calendar turns to March. If it does snow, I just leave it. I just leave it because I know within a day or two it's going to be gone. That there's no way it won't melt away in March. You got to be diligent in January and February because if you don't get rid of it on your sidewalks and whatever could be around, as that big blizzard snow was for weeks and weeks and weeks. So make the preparations, but it sounds like we're going to do okay here in KC. We got a fun show lined up for you today. We've got some tidying up to do, I guess you would call it, around the Super Bowl, and has nothing to do with football. It has to do with all the ancillary stuff. We'll do that around 10:30 today. We're going to have some fun with Mark. We got a couple of videos that we've shared with Mark Van Sickle to see if we have different impressions of what we saw. One of them involving Patrick Mahomes. And it had nothing to do with the football on the field. But we start today with what I think are a couple of really interesting topics. The first is something that I didn't like 5 years ago when it happened. Now, when this first came to fruition, it was coming about because Kansas and Missouri were competing against each other. AMC Theaters had moved from Missouri to Kansas. It was a big deal. The corporate headquarters moved. And they thought it would be a really good idea between Governor Parson and Governor Kelly in Kansas to have some sort of a truce between the states where they would no longer compete against each other for businesses. And I remember thinking at the time, this is the single stupidest thing I've ever heard. I don't understand why, especially if we live here in Kansas City. We want the states to compete. We want our businesses to succeed and do well, just like we want DOJ to work with our federal government. We want the best deal for the company that you either own, manage, or work for. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. You want success for your business. If you work for somebody else, you want the business to do well. Theoretically, that will be good for you in some fashion, whether it's better benefits, a 1 or 2% higher raise when you get your salary upped or whatever it may be. That's how this works. Why these two states would call a truce is beyond me, and why Missouri would want any part of this is totally stunning to me. Missouri's roughly twice the size of Kansas. They have more businesses, more money, more taxes coming in, more population, more everything. They have more tourism, more recreation, everything you could want a state to be. All due respect to my family and friends in Kansas. We're lifelong Kansas. Missouri has Kansas beat in every possible way. The only thing Missouri has that Kansas doesn't have, that Kansas doesn't want, is Kansas City, Missouri proper, and St. Louis, Missouri proper. Those are problems. And they draw down all the tax money, and they obviously create crime and a lot of big city issues that we see in metropolitan areas all over the country. But beyond that, it isn't close. Kansas doesn't have the lakes, the mountain. Oh, don't call me from Kansas and say you love Geary Lake. It's a wonderful lake, but it's not the Lake of the Ozarks, for crying out loud. We're talking about an economic engine for a state. You know, you get down around Springfield and Branson and the entertainment and the mountains and the lake down there and all. Missouri has everything going its way. So I took it as a little odd when I heard that all of a sudden out of nowhere, this deal, this truce that was agreed to 5 years ago is expiring in a few months. And a senator in Missouri in Jefferson City wants to extend it. Why is Missouri stepping up wanting to extend this? Have they not learned that they got a lot of advantages over Kansas? Why does Missouri want a truce with Kansas just right here, basically in the Kansas City area on the state line? Because I would have thought after 5 years, they'd realize we're just a much bigger economic engine. Missouri has all kinds of opportunity. I never understood it to begin with. I guess it maybe seemed like a good deal for Kansas, but now they want to extend this. And the only thing I can think of is Royals and Chiefs. But here's the problem. Kansas is already making moves on the Royals and Chiefs. There's no extending some business truce through Senate Bill number 630 in Jefferson City that's going to keep Kansas from taking the Royals and Chiefs. And that's why this agreement that's been in place for 5 years, whatever it isn't particularly legal. I don't know who would have followed it. I'm sure there are hundreds of businesses that have moved across the state line in our city during this truce. I don't even understand it. Is it politicians getting together saying the spirit of this is we're not going to try to steal this from you? Well, boo-hoo, Missouri. You're the big bad boy on the block. You have the ability to kick sand in Kansas' face. Do it. Do it, Missouri. You have every advantage in your favor. The only thing you don't have is a star bond legislation that's been passed, where you can just call up a sports team and say, we'll pay for 70% of your stadium using your sales taxes. You don't have that. But instead of SB 630, pass it. Do it now. Match Kansas. If you're matching Kansas, you're not competing. That's not breaking the truce. You're just putting something in place in Missouri that Kansas has that's a really good idea, that you put in and enact the legislation to keep what you already have. That's not stealing. That fits within the parameters, but you don't need some stupid Senate bill to do that. What you need is a star bond. And it needs to be somewhere close to 70%, because that's what Kansas is offering. Maybe you can get away with 50%. And Clark Hunt would say, I want to stay here because this is where my father put the team. And maybe the Royals say, we want to stay here because we wanted to be downtown or, just across the river or something like that. Maybe. I think this is a waste of time. I think you're wasting time in Jeff City with SB 630, trying to have a truce with the state of Kansas, which is the worst idea ever. Oh, I got an idea. California should come up with Senate Bill number 630 and get with Texas and say, we're going to have a truce with Texas. We're not going to compete on businesses anymore. You're not going to steal our businesses anymore. We're not going to steal yours. Texas and California are going to have a truce. What would you think if that happened? See, this is what I like to do. We live in our own little bubble here in Kansas City, and sometimes we can't see the forest for the trees. And when you see a deal between Kansas and Missouri and you think that's a good idea, it's really a bad idea. Would it be a good idea for Texas to sign a deal with California that says we're not going to compete for your businesses? Would that make sense for Texas? No. So why would it make sense for Missouri or Kansas to do this? Well, the only thing I can think of is exactly what Doge is breaking down. Government gets comfortable. The people entrenched, the people spending our tax dollars, all the bureaus, all the agencies, all the politicians, all the judges, all the people in charge, their life is good. And they don't want to upset the apple cart. And guess what they really don't like? Bad news. They don't like it when somebody leaves their state and goes across the state line. It's bad for everybody in their state. So the two states get together. It's collusion is what it is. It's close to communism. It certainly isn't what America is. America is 50 unique countries with one giant federal governing body that's gotten way too big and doing way too more than they were ever designed to do. These states should be competing, folks. And Missouri should toss that legislation in the trash can and come up with something a little bit better. Something like a star bond. Now, Doge has been a lot of fun, but there are other workings going on in D.C. that I absolutely love. This one hasn't gotten much attention, but this might be my favorite of them all so far. Because do you remember the stimulus package a couple of years ago that added 87,000 IRS agents? It sends $80 billion out of our treasury into the IRS. $80 billion. Kristi Noem has crafted a letter. She's in charge of Homeland Security, and she's crafted a letter and identified and let the Treasury know that the money will now be diverted to her from the IRS, that she wants these agents of the IRS to be deputized and sent to the border. Did you know that IRS agents carry guns? That there's actually an IRS police force, essentially? Tough guy, bad dudes, carrying guns, wearing vests, helmets, the whole thing. Riot gear if they need it, whatever. They've got it. How about we put that to use? Kristi Noem wants to send them to the border. I think this is fantastic. The IRS is the number one most disliked agency in the federal government, and it's not close, according to polling of American people. The DHS, Kristi Noem, wants investigators as well. She doesn't just want agents at the border. She wants to use the investigators that largely are on computers, sitting in offices. She wants to turn them away from tax fraud to immigration and use them to try to find people that are here illegally. This is a fantastic use. Now, they're cutting money everywhere. I guess it would be easy, or maybe not. It's part of a bill that Congress passed. I don't think it would be easy for Trump to just go take this $80 billion away. There's a lot of ways to cut money in the executive branch. I don't think this is one of them, because this was part of a stimulus package. So I think ripping that money away from them is going to be really hard, but diverting it to something different may be in their purview. And this is fantastic. That means Joe Biden and the Democrats are actually now helping enforce the border because they passed their stimulus thing with 87,000 new IRS agents and $80 billion a year that we can apply to the border through Homeland Security. Now I think you know why that's one of my favorite stories. That's just fabulous when we find unique ways to do things like that. I'm not really fond of the IRS. I know there's great people here that work for the federal government and the IRS. You may be listening right now. I'd love to hear from somebody that works for the IRS or did. Tell me if you think this is a good idea or if I'm just wrong, if I'm just being a cynical taxpayer. I may be wrong. I'd love to know your expertise on the IRS. 913-408-7957. That's 408-7957. What happens when we send the IRS to the border instead of your house for not paying taxes? Let's have some fun with that on Uncanceled. This is KCMO Talk Radio.
From Gardner to Grain Valley, it's Kevin Kietzman Uncanceled on 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio.
If you'd like to be part of the show, you can join us at 913-408-7957. That's 408-7957. I was just talking with Mark during the break about the plane crash in Scottsdale. You know, there's been just a complete rash of plane crashes recently, starting with that terrible one in Washington, D.C., continued with the Life Flight in Philadelphia. And Scottsdale Airport is the busiest municipal airport in America. It is one Learjet after another. It is crazy to be around there. Spent a lot of time in the Phoenix area. The golf tournament that was last weekend, if you were watching and you ever saw an aerial shot, you would have seen airplanes. The airport is right next to that golf course where this crash happened, and this was a weird one. A Learjet lands and then starts skidding. It doesn't get stopped properly, and the video that I saw looked like maybe the front wheel, the landing gear buckled or something and went down, and the plane was sort of skidding. It was kicking up dust. It veered off the runway to the left, and it hit a much bigger plane. And there's one fatality, and the rest of the folks were taken to the hospital. And then it very quickly got out that Motley Crue's Vince Neil was the owner of the airplane that had trouble on the runway that skidded off and hit the other plane. Now, I'm no Motley Crue expert, but it became a big thing on social media. People wondering if Vince Neil was on there. Is he okay? The whole deal. His agent/lawyer has put a statement out this morning about the crash at 2:39 local time in Phoenix. Learjet Model 35A, owned by Vince Neil, was attempting to land at the Scottsdale Airport. For reasons unknown at this time, the plane veered from the runway, causing it to collide with another parked plane. On board Mr. Neil's plane were two pilots and two passengers. Mr. Neil was not on the plane. More specific details regarding the collision are not available. As this is a rapidly evolving situation, there's an ongoing investigation. Thoughts and prayers for the victim and those involved. Respectfully, Warp Robinson Law, PLLC. That sounds like his agent, but a lot of folks interested in that. Most of the people going in and out of the Scottsdale Airport are known either in the entertainment or business community. There are so many CEOs that have homes there and just fly back and forth from wherever they work or do whatever. It's crazy. And some of the side, like the jet that was parked that got hit, like Vince Neil's Learjet, dream come true. Lifetime dream come true if you have that one. It was about a third the size of the ones sitting there. And some of them, when I've been out there and playing golf or something, looked up, they almost look like the regional jets that we see that, maybe have 100 passengers or something like that. Just massive private airplanes all over the place in Scottsdale. Don't know what's going on with all of that. This story piqued my interest. So many people are freaked out about Doge, and that doesn't bother us here at all. You've heard about the nearly $60 million last week that went from FEMA to illegal luxury hotels in New York. That one's been beaten around quite a bit. You've probably heard a lot about that. There's going to be people fired over that because that was done after Trump said don't do it and after Doge said don't do it. That's poking the big man with a stick. So there's going to be people lose their jobs over that. Right now they're trying to pull that funding and get that money back, which is a reasonable thing to do. We've seen people on the left go crazy. We saw Maxine try to get in a building at the Department of Education. We've seen Schumer with his, and this was more on tariffs and stuff, his Corona and his avocado. And they're just doing weird things, and they're weird people, so it doesn't work. They don't have the instinctive political savvy that Donald Trump has, and now everybody that's in politics is being compared to Trump. Most Republicans look really boring compared to Trump, and we don't like them as much as we love Trump. But the Democrats look downright silly because they're trying to do theater, they're trying to do things, and it's just not working. But it extends beyond elected officials. It's permeating throughout institutions all over the country. Because there are many institutions everywhere, private, churches, cities, municipalities, that are getting money from the federal government that it's time we dry that money up. There are people everywhere getting rich off this, and there's money being spent that's a complete and total waste. One such place I will offer up to you is the Greater Second Missionary Baptist Church in Chattanooga, Tennessee, where their pastor is a far-left dude named Steve Caudle. Steve Caudle has lost his mind over Elon Musk at such a level that he said the following, and this isn't getting much play. I'm very surprised this isn't getting much play. This is a call to arms. The pastor, a Baptist pastor, says, quote, I'm worried we're on the verge of bloodshed. This is an attempt to take us back to a day where we don't want to go and will not go. Therefore, there will be conflict. I pray that the peace of God will win out and overcome the madness that is attempting to take over this nation. But I will say to you, belovedly, that no one likes violence, but sometimes violence is necessary. When Elon Musk forces his way into the United States Treasury and threatens to steal your personal information and your Social Security check, there is a possibility of violence. Sometimes the devil will act so ugly that you have no other choice but to get violent and fight. Well, some would say, Reverend, you shouldn't be talking about violence. This is the Christian thing to do. And I say, why not talk this way? Jesus did. What? Cutting spending at the federal government has people this unhinged? First of all, your personal information they have, Pastor. I could sit down in a minute or two with you and explain to you that they know everything about you and everything about me. That ship has sailed. That's gone. Nobody's taking away a Social Security check. What they're finding is the Social Security checks in Social Security only add up to be a fraction of what we are spending in Social Security because there's waste and there's fraud everywhere. And that is nothing. If you think that's ripe for fraud, wait till they get to Medicare and Medicaid. And I'm not talking about people who get Medicare and Medicaid. I'm not talking about reducing anything for anyone. What I'm talking about is the doctors. Yes, there are bad doctors in the world. This just in, we've seen them. We all know Dr. Fauci. So there's dirty doctors out there scamming money right and left that they can get their hands on. It always trickles down from the government through hospitals, corporations, pharmaceutical companies. Are you kidding me? How much are they going to find in Medicare and Medicaid? I honestly believe that's going to be the mother lode of savings in our federal government. When we finally go in there and categorize things and find out what's going on, we will learn why Ozempic in New York City is $1,200 and in London it's $30. That makes no sense. It's the same drug maker. It's the same pharmaceutical company. What is going on that Ozempic is $1,200 for someone in New York City, but it's $30 if you live in London? This is going to be crazy, folks, and these people are losing their minds. You got pastors at Baptist churches in the South calling for violence because Elon Musk is cutting funding. How much money is that church getting? How much money are all the churches getting? Or certain churches getting in certain jurisdictions with certain politicians? What the heck is going on in this land? It is getting wild out there, folks. It is getting absolutely wild. We are Uncanceled on KCMO Talk Radio. I'm Kevin Kietzman. We're back right after this on KCMO.
Definitely in the car. In the car. And my phone, anywhere.
KCMO Talk Radio. Now on FM at 95.7. Kansas City's place to talk. Call Kevin Kietzman, 913-408-7957. Now on 95.7 FM.
Preliminary numbers are in for the Super Bowl. 135 million people were watching in the first half of the game. 126 million was the average for the game, so you can figure that out. About 20 million people turned that thing off at halftime or later. Nothing on television gets 20 million viewers except football. And 20 million people walked away from this thing on Sunday night. The game was so bad and the halftime show was so bad. 20 million people turned it off and went to bed or hopefully did something better than that. Wouldn't that have been nice? Here is Tim in the Northland. Hi, Tim. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, Keats. Wanted to say I disagree with you a little bit on how much money they're going to find versus Medicare, Medicaid versus the military-industrial complex.
Well, maybe, but Trump's going to want to spend money in the military.
Oh, sure, I get that. But let's look at where money comes from anyway. What are we really basing our money on? And I think it's the good faith of the United States government. What if we based our money on our actual country, our land, our resources, our buildings, our cars, just the totality of it? It would be much more than what we owed. Then we can base our money actually on something we have, and therefore it has value. I mean, we used to base it on gold, but who knows where all the gold is, right? And then we can kind of reset the monetary system, which I think is eventually going to have to be done before everything is said and done.
I think you're probably right. I'm not an expert on all those things that you're talking about. I know this. If we can get to a point where we're taking in what we're spending, that would be a great start. If we could get there, if we could just get there and the rest of our lives and for our children and our grandchildren going forward, if the United States just operated on what it's taking in, that would be a wonderful thing.
With all this waste that they have found, I want to demand, and I think it's only fair, and I think everybody would agree, that we get all of our income tax refunded from the federal government.
Like from last year, or what are you talking about? Total for your whole life? What are you talking about?
Maybe our whole life. I mean, our country is much more valuable, like I said, with our land resources and all the goods and products we have and the gas and oil under our feet and commodities and things like that.
So this sounds absolutely nuts, but Trump believes that if he was king for a day and could really run the whole thing without needing to pass any new laws or anything, he absolutely believes that we can do away with income tax. And I believe it too, because states do it and they have no problem doing it. They still operate at a surplus. We've only had an income tax a little over 100 years. It was the dumbest idea ever. We did 150 years in America without one. I don't know why we have one, but once they got it, they couldn't stop. They always wanted more, and that's when the spending became a problem. We need to get off income tax or at least reduce it dramatically. Here's what I've never understood. Why don't we have an internet tax? Like if I'm all this stuff being bought on Amazon, why isn't the federal government scraping 3 or 4% of that?
Exactly. So most money today, almost 99% now is digital. Remember, Congress was given the power to print and coin money. Then they passed it over to the Federal Reserve, and we have this income tax. This is why this should all end. It's all digital and plastic now anyway. You don't need coins. Trump just got rid of the pennies yesterday. Next will be the nickels, the dimes, the quarters, and everything else. It's all going to go plastic, electronic, digital money, and you don't need the Federal Reserve to print Federal Reserve notes and draw interest on that and create an income tax so we can pay the Federal Reserve, which is a private bank, not a federal bank.
Tim, great call. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
That was outstanding. There's a smart guy, knows what he's talking about. He's on it. Do we know what Tim does for a living? I should have asked him. Sounds like he's on that, and he's in business or accounting or something along those lines. Really good stuff there. We really appreciate that. I thought this was interesting. We had a couple little tidbits here that I wanted to share today. One of them is you saw maybe during the Super Bowl, Rupert Murdoch was up in the box, and they showed it. He's like 90-some years old. And he runs Fox News, but he also owns Sky News throughout Europe and Australia. He's a media mogul. He's a multi-billionaire media mogul. I don't know why this story kind of tickles me. And I like Megyn Kelly. I just don't love her. She's a little, I don't know. She's a little in your face for me, and people tell me I'm that way, so she must be really in your face. You know what I mean? So she has reacted to this in a scathing fashion because the reaction from people is pretty funny when you think about it. Rupert Murdoch has purchased a company called Red Seat Ventures. Red Seat Ventures is a podcast company, and he's going to own that, but it's going to be separate from Fox News. And everybody's giving Megyn Kelly a hard time because her podcast and everything she does is now owned by Rupert Murdoch. That's just the tip of the iceberg. This company also owns Tucker Carlson's podcast and everything he's doing, and Bill O'Reilly's podcast and everything he's doing. The three biggest names that left Fox News on unseemly terms in one way or another are now, after they're out on their own, independent, I work for myself, the whole thing, owned by Rupert Murdoch. I just want to let Rupert Murdoch know that if he wants to buy Crooked Tail Media here in Lenexa, Kansas, he can buy it. It's for sale. I'll keep doing the podcast. It's okay. He could come right in and buy it, and I'll be more than happy to admit that he owns it and I work for him, which I think Megyn Kelly should do. So she's saying, I don't work for Fox News. This isn't Fox News, but it's Rupert Murdoch. It's Rupert Murdoch. And there's something pretty funny about that. But it's such a growing business and growing platform. Murdoch, generally speaking, knows what he's doing. And one of the things he was doing right there is buying talent. He was buying talent that he fired. It's one of the weirdest things ever. I mean, totally weird. Also, this from the Daily Mail, from the Super Bowl and the Trump-Taylor Swift fiasco, or whatever you would want to call it. The Daily Mail reports that Trump asked Brittany Mahomes to not visit with Taylor Swift on the field beforehand, go to her suite, whatever. I don't know if I believe this story. Daily Mail reports that, not me. He said, Brittany, I love you too much. Don't go down there and see Taylor. Like Trump was plotting some sort of an attack on Taylor Swift at the Super Bowl. I don't think Trump is a premeditated guy much on things like that. Once she got booed, I think he was all over it.
Yeah, I think that's something that Trump says kind of off the cuff to be funny. He's like, don't interact with Taylor Swift.
Okay, so maybe he sent a text or had somebody send word to the Mahomes. They were there, though. Randy Mahomes, did we see Brittany with Trump, too?
I don't know if I saw Brittany Jackson took a selfie
And
with
so
him.
did Randy Mahomes, right, the mom?
I think so.
I think she was in there with him, too. So, which I'm cool with. I just don't believe that he called Brittany Mahomes and said, don't hang out with Taylor Swift because I'm going to crush her at the Super Bowl. That does not really in any way sound like, I just don't believe that happened. My favorite post-Super Bowl was about Cooper DeJean. Now, we don't like Cooper DeJean because he scored the pick six touchdown. And is he the first like real white cornerback since Jason Sehorn or something?
Yeah.
Which has been what, 25 years ago?
They made a big deal about that in the draft last year. They're like, is he going to be a safety or
Right.
is he going to be a cornerback?
Yeah, he's white. We got to move him to safety.
Yeah.
He can't play corner. Well, he's a corner, and he's really, really, really good. And he's really good at everything that he does. And somebody I forget who it was, went on Twitter and posted this. And this just tickled me to death. Because you can't be white and play corner in the NFL. And so there was a picture of Cooper DeJean, and it was titled something like Jackie Robinson Moment. And it said, thousands of little white boys all across America will remember Cooper DeJean's pick six of Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl for the rest of their lives. Seeing someone who looks like you play a position they say isn't for your kind is life-altering. Hashtag Jackie Robinson Moment. I mean, if you can't laugh at some of these things, everything that has bothered us the last 20 years is just flipping. It's changing everywhere. So I'm not kidding. There was a time 5 years ago, if you posted that on X, you'd be canceled. If I repeated it on the radio, they'd be coming after me. You can't say that about a white. Well, I'm making fun of the white cornerback more than anything else. I've got no problem making fun of white people and white corners, white rappers. I don't care. I'm good with that. This kid can play. I don't care that he's white. He can play. And I think that's kind of funny that he would say that's their Jackie Robinson moment from Super Bowl 59. Little strong, but we will absolutely take it. All right, and then we had this one, Mark. I wanted to ask you about this one before we get to our fun topics at the end. You've seen the video now of Patrick Mahomes at the end of the game, walking down the Chiefs bench, all the offensive players sitting on the bench, shakes all their hands, the game's winding down, there's only a minute left or whatever. And he gets toward the end, and Samaje Perine stands up and tries to dap, or whatever you're going to call it, Mahomes as he's walking by. And Travis Kelce is the next player, and all Mahomes sees is Kelce, who stands up, and they do this long extended bro hug. When they're doing the big bro hug and everything, Mahomes kind of turns and he can see P. Ryan. He's looking him right in the eye. He's only a couple feet away from him. P. Ryan may have actually brushed Mahomes as he was going for Kelsey. There are people all over Patrick Mahomes, Chiefs haters, Mahomes haters, saying that Mahomes is an absolute jerk for stiffing Samaje P. Ryan in that line. What did you see?
I saw him going over to his best friend on the team, Travis Kelsey. He saw that he had his hands in his head. And even Mahomes, on the live broadcast, I didn't see the angle with P. Ryan there, but in the live broadcast, I saw Mahomes had tears in his eyes. So I think he goes over, gives Kelsey the hug, and then he has tears in his eyes. Maybe he's not seeing perfectly. Maybe he doesn't see. Even if he looked at P. Ryan, he might not have seen him with the tears in his eyes. So that's my excuse for Mahomes.
All right. If it were 10 years ago and it were Tom Brady and Gronk, same take?
If it was same situation, I'd probably have the same take.
I will say this. It does look like he's sort of – I don't think he's got anything going on with P. Ryan at all. I don't think there's anything between Mahomes and P. Ryan. It did look like he sort of big-timed him. Like, well, whoever this player is, it doesn't matter because there's my boy. It's like, there's Kelsey. My boy's right here. I'm going for 87, and I don't care who gets my way. But then after the bro hug, he sees him, and he turns around, and then he just walks away from everybody. He never did come back to P. Ryan. I think that maybe is what's got people going. But it is unbelievable in this day and age. You can't do anything at something like the Super Bowl and not be seen. I thought it was weird that there wasn't more Trump coverage. That, like, the shots of Chris Jones shaking his hand and stuff, there were no really great views of that, where there was nobody on the field with a camera down there like, oh, Trump's out here, maybe we should shoot this. Like, nobody? Did you not think that the Trump shots, everything we saw of him on the field, were pretty random? Like, what was going to happen if something actually happened? There was no cameras on him.
Yeah, I just saw cell phone footage of
Right.
that stuff. Yeah.
Wasn't that weird?
Yeah.
Ignoring Trump at the Super Bowl. There you have it. 913-408-7957. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, we'd love to hear from you on 95.7 KCMO Talk Radio.
If it's happening in KCMO, it's on KCMO 95.7 FM. Here's Kevin Kietzman.
We mentioned at the top of the show, we thought some people at FEMA would get fired over sending $59 million to luxury hotels for illegal aliens after Trump had said, don't do this. And we now have Benny Johnson. You've heard his podcast advertised during some of the breaks here on KCMO Talk Radio. He's on X right now. Senior DHS official has confirmed to Benny Johnson that FEMA's chief financial officer, Mary Comans, was just fired for illegally funding migrant luxury hotels in New York City against the orders of President Trump. She is arguably the most powerful person at FEMA, controlling billions in funding. This person told Johnson, quote, effective immediately, FEMA is terminating the employment of 4 individuals for circumventing leadership to unilaterally make egregious payments for luxury New York City hotels for migrants. Firings include FEMA's chief financial officer, 2 program analysts, and a grant specialist. Under President Trump and Secretary Noam's leadership, DHS will not sit idly by and allow deep state activists to undermine the will and the safety of the American people. This person went on to say and tell Benny Johnson, criminal charges could be filed against these people. Holy smokes. You want to stop the government officials and the deep state from ignoring the President of the United States? Arrest them. Fire them and arrest them. That works for me. Absolutely works for me. Here's John in KCK. Hi, John. Good morning. How are you, sir?
Hey, Kevin. It's glad to talk to you again, buddy. As much as I'm from Philadelphia, but I hate the Eagles. I'm actually a Packers fan. But I went to Penn State, so I was rooting for Saquon. But last year, I was at the parade. And this year, on Friday at 1:45, anybody and everybody can come join at Union Station or at Kessler and Pershing. Just north in between the trees there on Kessler, north of that intersection, because the shooting was at that intersection on Kessler and Pershing. I'm going to be spending my time just remembering an angel of the Kansas City Chiefs that shouldn't have been lost that day. And so...
You're talking about Lisa Lopez Galvan, and you were close to this when it happened, right?
I was not only close, but being a veteran in Iraq and Afghanistan, when the firings happened, I immediately took accountability of my 2 kids, my oldest son's best friend that was there. And as everybody was running away, after I got accountability of my kids, I saw a group of bodies surrounded. And as a 2-time veteran in Iraq and Afghanistan, I immediately walked right up there and saw what was going on, saw Lisa, and then monitored the situation. And I realized her son was realizing the situation too, so I was actually rendering aid to her son. So I just wanted to, while my daughter's sitting there crying, wanting to go home, and I'm like, we can't go home right now. This is not who I am, and all this other stuff, especially what I've been through. So my daughter had a bad day that day, and she pleaded with me not to go to the parade this year. And my girlfriend pleaded with me too not to go to the parade this year. So obviously I don't have to worry about that. But still on Friday at 1:45 at Union Station at Pershing and Kessler, I want to be there. And if anybody else wants to join too, to honor her beautiful life, I request that you do so as well. So,
thank you, John. That's beautiful. Thank you very much. Appreciate your service too. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir, bud.
All right, 1:45 Friday at Union Station there. John's going to be putting together a group of folks that want to come by and remember Lisa Lopez Galvan, who lost her life at the Chiefs Super Bowl parade last year. Sad thing. A couple of news and notes here with Mark. Let's have some fun. Did you hear about the cars that got smashed downtown?
I did not. I mean, I'm not surprised, but I have not heard of the recent one.
Private lot, gated lot, 25 windshields smashed out. Some dude took asphalt and bricks, walking through, smashing them out. They grabbed him and said, what are you doing? He says, I'm checking him for safety. They hauled him off. What do you think they did with him?
Put him back out on the street?
Exactly. No charges pressed.
Yeah.
Nothing.
That's crazy.
At this point, no charges. Did you know that we are just a couple miles away from the College Baseball Hall of Fame?
Yes, I think I've been there once.
I have not been in there yet. They're having their Hall of Fame class in for their ceremony on Thursday. Have you heard this Hall of Fame class?
I have not yet.
This is college baseball, and they're all going to be in Overland Park on Thursday at the College Baseball Hall of Fame, which is at Prairie Fire on 135th Street. You ready for this class? Roger Clemens, Mike Schmidt, Mark Teixeira, and Jeff King, who played with the Royals. They were all great in college, too. Of course they were.
That's some MLB Hall of Famers right there.
It sounds like they're going to get their college hall started by getting major leaguers in there that just played a little college ball.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm okay with that. And finally, if anybody's ever received a call from their wife or a text in the middle of the day, and they say, sweetie, I got a surprise for you when you get home. I think we all know the first thing you're thinking. But the second thing,
at least.
Yeah, what's that?
Or hoping at least.
Yeah, right. Well, you're thinking it. That's probably not what it is, right? But you're thinking it. And so dude in Indiana gets this text, and he's like, well, okay, I may cut off a little early today and head home. And so he's thinking, at the very least, she's baking some fresh brownies or something. It's going to be great when he gets home. But he doesn't know, and she's not saying, and they played this text game, and she's like, oh, you're going to like it. He's thinking, well, maybe she bought something new to wear. I don't, something good. I don't know. Probably isn't little Johnny got straight A's. That's probably not it. But there's got to be something good to it. And he gets home, and what do you think happens? What do you think she does?
I don't know.
She says, I won $300,000 on a lottery ticket.
Ooh. Even better than what we were thinking.
Even better than what the man was thinking. It was better than what he hoped for.
That's incredible.
$300,000. Those folks live about an hour north of Indianapolis in Indiana. That's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool wife. I don't know what my wife would do. I think she'd probably just call me like hyperventilating if she scratched off a ticket or something and won that money.
Mm-hmm.
What would happen at your house? Keep it a secret for half a day?
She might actually. She might wait till I get home and be like, hey, guess what happened? And then just spring it.
Do you think you'd like get weak at the knees if she told you she just won $300,000? Like buckle?
Probably.
I know I would. Come on, Jessica, go get us some lottery tickets. Let's get this done today. Thanks, everybody, for listening to Uncanceled on 95.7 KCMO Talk Radio. Dan Bongino's up next.